Hey everybody, we're going to be talking about the Logic Pro Quick Sampler. This is one of my favorite plugins. It really has stepped up the game for what we can do inside Logic with sampling in a quick yet really sophisticated way. We're going to go through a lot of the features of this. We're going to talk about some of the really powerful ways it can integrate with the other tools in Logic. We're going to look at the creative ways that this tool can enhance your workflows and your songs. Okay, as an overview to this tool, we're going to just talk about some of the interfacings first and some of the reasons why this is a powerful tool. It's a single audio file sampler. That means we pull in one file, it works from that file. It doesn't mean that we're limited to just playing that file in a linear fashion. We can actually set this up so that it gets sliced and we can play different parts of that file simultaneously to get layers. But because it works off of a single audio file, it means it's really simple, and that power of this tool is in its simplicity. If you're not familiar with what sampling is, it is the process of recording something, a sound, a musical note, and then using a sampler to re-trigger that file and play it back. And we can map that across the keyboard so that if you play a low note, it transposes it down to a low note. If you play a high note, it transposes that one recording up. Logic has gotten better and better in terms of the quality of actually transposing that. In the old days, you would have to use some sort of sample rate function, so it would transpose it up by speeding it up and slowing it down. But that meant the high notes were really short and the low notes were really long. Well, now the time and the pitch transposition are independent from each other. And so you play a high note, it's the same length as if you play a low note. This tool is able to do that very well. And because it's a single file sampler, it means that what may look like limitations in terms of you can't record every single note on a keyboard and have it mapped at multiple velocities, well, we have a much simpler workflow. But that workflow is really great. We can drag and drop from nearly any place in the operating system or inside Logic. We can pull files off of tracks. We can pull it out of the browser. We can pull it out of the Finder and just drag it right onto this or onto the track header. We'll look at that in a little bit. There's a lot of real-time functionality, which is cool. Means that we can pull this from any project we're working on. We can add MIDI effects to alter it. And anything that we're doing here, you can add modulators and synthesis tools and the matrix to help manipulate and change those files in real time. Overall, I would say this has an intuitive interface, but every once in a while there's a few things that you need to really know about, and we'll talk about those things. Some of the key features that we're going to look at. There's 3 playback modes: classic, one shot, and slice. My favorite is slice, but the other 2 have their purposes as well. Classic just means it's like a classic sampler. You have a file, you set a left start point and a right end point, and then you can trigger that note and you can actually have it loop to have a part that just plays continuously. And so that's nice. The one shot means it's going to play the file from beginning to end. And then the slice is where we cut up the file into all these different segments, and you can trigger those in different ways. This also works with the flex time and the tempo sync of Logic, which we'll look at a little bit. We have built-in synthesis functionality, modulation, a matrix that helps us use this like we might a subtractive synthesizer. And those modulation tools are the same as we see across many of the different parts of Logic. So when you import or load a sample, you can do that in a few ways. You can drag from the Finder or browser. You can do a direct microphone recording. There is a recording option directly in there. You set your input. And then you can also drag it to the track header. When you do that, you can do the original or optimize. Original just means that it's going to maintain all the original, the speed, tuning, and everything of the original file. If you do optimize, it's actually going to try to get it into the time and tempo and the pitch of our project. And so it will make some changes to it. And those mean that you'll be able to integrate it a little bit easier into your current project. That's 9 times out of 10 the one that I use. I use the optimized. For the playback modes, classic, we have the loop and sustain. So that's the one where you just have a file and you can map it across your keyboard. It's fine. It works really well. I use that when I'm trying to maybe take a voice and turn it into an instrument I can play across the keyboard. You can do a one-shot. That's really great for percussive sounds, and this makes a bigger deal when you start talking about the drum machine designer and how we use this tool with that. And then we have the slice, which you can see on the screen. You can slice and chop and trigger these slices and move them around. At the end of this video, when we actually dive into the software and do a demonstration, that's one of the ones that we'll do at that point. Sample editing basics, trim, the beginning and the end. You can see on the little image there that the bottom arrows, the left and right ones, that sets the starting, the end point. You can pull the top little fade icons and actually create a crossfade or a fade in and out so that those have a smooth loop point. And where it says snap, you can actually snap to 0 crossings. That helps make so that when you do this, it doesn't add any pops or clicks to it. We can also do that to the transients and notes and the beats to keep things exactly in tempo. So a few different options with that, which are nice. We can also set our loop point. And this is one of the areas that I think is the most tricky in terms of the interface. If you look at the image on the screen, at the bottom of that, where it says sample start and sample end and sample length, at the very left side, there's a little X. This is one of the few places that has 2 layers of information. Right now, it's setting the sample start, end, and length, but if you X that out, it will actually take you to some of the more global overview features. One of them is the loop, where we can set a loop forward, a reverse, or we can have it alternate back and forth, or play to the end when you release the note. Sometimes you want any of those things. In terms of the flex time and follow tempo, which is also something that appears once you X out of the sample start and end, you can see the little sideways hourglass looking icon. That's the flex on and off. And that means that it will do the transposition and timing separate from each other. And if you play a note on any range of the keyboard, it will maintain the same time, even if you're transposing. And then we can also have a follow tempo, so that if we have it, an analyzed sample that we're working with, and then we have a faster tempo, it'll play at the faster tempo or the slower tempo. And then we can do any subdivision of that 1, 2, 4, 8, half, quarter, or eighth. And those are nice creative tools. So if you have a drum thing you're doing, it's inside the tempo, but maybe we want to have it be like a slower speed version. We can slow it down without having to change the tempo. In terms of sound shaping tools, we have a really good set here. We have pitch tools where we can do glide, and we have a pitch envelope. So you can have percussive tool, like if you have a kick that you want to have start above the pitch and then go down in pitch as you trigger it, or if you want to have it start on pitch and go down and like fall off, then we can have those pitch tools. We can do that with the envelope. We can also have the key tracking so that it changes as you go across the keys, and also set things like glide in between the notes. We have a whole filter section. We're not going to go through each little bit of the filter, but it's a standard filter that we might have on a synthesizer, and that can just help us sculpt the sound in various ways. And we have an amp section with an envelope and the number of voices. That's how many different simultaneities you can have, how many notes can play simultaneously on the keyboard when you're triggering this. Modulation techniques. We have 2 LFOs plus a modulation matrix. And so we can actually come through and work with those. This is LFO 1. You can set, if you want a different rate, you can have it fade in. I mean, all of the standard things, and you can choose by the target in the bottom corner where that is going to control. The second one, a little zoomed out, and then we have this modulation matrix with all of these options here. Those are all the things that we can control in the matrix. Those are all the targets. And the source is any of the different source options. So you have a nice little matrix to control additional features there. In terms of workflow integration and working with other things, I wanted to start by looking at this. This is the gear menu, the main menu for this tool. It's in the upper right-hand corner, where we have some additional things. I actually want to go through a few of these right now. We have auto loop. So if you don't know how to loop something, this can auto loop it for you and find it. If something's out of tune, this can tune it, put it into, the standard A440 tuning system. And then we have a number of other things. We have synth parameters where we can work on this. We can re-import the original file. We can re-import, optimize, reanalyze the transients, derive tempo from the loop length, crop the sample, crop the loop, optimize. I mean, those are all a lot of functionality things. The second half of this down below, we can create a sampler track. We can create a drum machine designer track, and we can copy the MIDI pattern. Those are really useful. So that second one, the create drum machine designer track, only works when you're in slice mode. It takes each of the slices and puts it into a different empty slot on a new drum machine designer, and then adds MIDI to the actual instrument track. And so that's a great way to take what we're doing in this instrument, and pull it into the drum machine designer, which is really cool. And then the rest of those are just different options for the crossfades and then display options that we have. All of this, of course, is compatible with the step sequencer in Logic. You can load that up and trigger the different slices. They're all attached to MIDI notes. You can automate functionality here. This is just you can take advantage of all the powerful things inside Logic and use them together as a full system. With this, when you are thinking about this, you could use one recording of a bunch of different percussive sounds, or a loop, like an Apple loop that has percussive sounds, and give it new life because you drag it in, you use the slice option. It can be a whole new instrument where you're triggering each of those sounds. And then if you want to take another step, you can turn it into the drum machine designer and then use it in additional ways with that. But you can also take maybe a recording of a voice or a melodic instrument and use the slice mode and turn that into a whole new melodic instrument. And that becomes really interesting. And that'll be some of the demonstrations we do here in a little bit. Couple tips and tricks. One of them is use optimize mode smartly. Don't just use the original mode. Pull that in, and then you can tie it into the existing tempo and key of your song. I think that's really helpful. You can retune and layer things in a creative way. And so even if you just have one sound, turn up the polyphony in the original mode, and then you can play it like a keyboard and have some really interesting response and output from that. Also, real-time modulation ideas. You can use the MIDI effects like the modulator. This has additional functionality over what the mod engine in Quick Sampler has. And so you would just map in the to section in the bottom left-hand corner of the modulator to any destination on the Quick Sampler. You can just say learn plugin parameter and then move the parameter on the Quick Sampler, and then it would map to it. Really easy but powerful. And then you can scale this up. When you have a file open in the Quick Sampler, you could just open up the full sampler for multi-sample setups on that same track, and the file would automatically go into it. And so you don't have to import or export. You can just open up the sampler instead of the Quick Sampler, and all the information will go directly. Same for Sample Alchemy, which you can do some really creative mangling inside that. Start in the Quick Sampler, end up in the Sample Alchemy tool. Great. If you want to go to the full Alchemy, often I would go from Quick Sampler to the full sampler, export .exs file, and then open that into Alchemy for advanced synthesis. So there is a pathway to that. It's a little bit less straightforward, but it is all compatible and actually very powerful. Okay, let's actually start looking at the tool itself. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the key features that we just overviewed and break them down. We're going to start with our Apple loops. This will show you how we can take some of these maybe old and dusty loops and add a new life to them. We're in our instrument beats filter here, and let's just find something that may work here. That I'm just going to pick a random one, Alphabet City beat maybe. Okay, that'll work. We're going to drag this over to the track header. We're going to do optimized, just like that. You'll see all of the different hits are now there, and they're all sliced. They all came sliced, and it knew that it put it into slice mode because it analyzed that it was a pattern, a beat pattern, and it said that makes the most sense. Now, when I play on my MIDI keyboard, I can always just do the same one over and over if I want to. Okay, cool, right? We can come through here and copy the MIDI pattern. I'm going to paste it out here. I'm going to play this. So it's going to play through that whole thing. And then if we wanted to, we could always come into our MIDI, of course, and just change some of these notes around. We have the ability to change MIDI however we want. But let's come through and we're going to turn on the flex and have it follow tempo. One of the nice things about that is it'll sound a little bit different. Sometimes it's actually starting to stretch it out. Let's pull the tempo way down though. If I turn that off, you'll see that it's shorter. When I turn it on and have follow tempo, it actually time expands each of those. So we can actually do some cool things with our tempo and get better results with it. So we're going to leave that on. We'll go back up to 100 at least, but okay, cool. If we find that any of these things are not right, well, we can definitely come through and move those around a little bit. Let's zoom in. We can move our slices around. We can add additional slices. Of course, we can always undo and delete those. But we have the ability to add new slices and get them just right. That's cool. Let's look at, just as an example, because we have all of these out here. There's a couple quirks with this when we go to, say, a drum machine designer track. There's a lot of slices here, more than the drum machine designer track can handle. And so it's going to say, we're only going to do the first 48. That is one thing about it. And one thing that maybe it's an argument to leave it in here. But I wanted to show you what this looks like. Now I have the Q sampler main. It shows you which slice that is. And we have the detail, which gives us the modulation, the pitch filter, and amplitude. And then we have the actual pad controls, so we can actually do some pitch and filter cutoff. These are like the smart controls in a way, but it ties to a reverb and a delay send. So we can actually add reverb to this if we want to, but it doesn't give us the full loop, but it gives us every one of those individual slices on its own pad, which is nice. In some ways, this is nice because then we can mix and match with other instruments, and we can delete some of these and we can change it around. There's more flexibility the minute we come into the actual drum machine designer, which is cool. But we're going to mute that for a second and go, well, before I mute it, I will say, because it's a multi-instrument, I can now put things on these tracks. I can put a compressor, limiter, distortion unit on each one of those individually, where I couldn't do that as much when it's in the quick sampler view, right? So we do have that ability to still use the MIDI with it and trigger them all, but that's fine. Let's delete this for a second because I want to do a step sequencer. Cool. You'll see they're already all mapped here. And so we can just use the step sequencer to program some of these things out. Let's do the repeat so we can actually trigger some of those things differently. Right? So that's kind of cool. So all of that functionality is here, and the integration with Logic is tight. That way we can get the results we want in whatever creative aspect that we're seeking. Okay. Let's see. Let's go back into the quick sampler for a moment, demonstrate a few other things with this. When we're doing the recorder, all we need to do is select which input we want, including other things that are inside Logic. So we can record directly from inside Logic and have that go into here, which is kind of nice. It means we can create a complex instrument or a sound through a bunch of effects and then just record it in, and that's fine. In terms of the modulation and the LFO 1 and 2, these are global things, and the pitch as well. So one thing, if I were to increase what this could do, I would like to be able to have pitch on a note or a slice-by-slice basis. That would be kind of nice because I think that'd be really helpful. Let's create a new one, though, and I'll walk you through the recording in part for a second to show you some of the benefit of it. This might actually give, I don't think it'll do too much feedback, but it might. And that's fine. Check 1. That's my voice. I'm not turning on the monitor. I don't want to necessarily have both of us. La. Right? So that's my voice. La, 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 la. And with this, now. La, la, la. But check this out. If I play a high note. See how it speeds it up and slows it down? That's the old school way of doing this. And I want to change that. So I'm going to click on the little X to get out of the sample start. I'm going to turn on flex and follow tempo. So the notes start and stop at the same place, whether I'm higher note or lower note. That's awesome. And let's do an auto loop. Okay, that works. We can do a longer release. Maybe a little bit of an attack. Let's turn on the filter. Let's do a little longer attack to get in, just to smooth out the beginning. Right? Other things that we can do in terms of creativity, maybe I want to slow down the actual voice. A little bit of an interesting beginning there. Let's actually move that past the la. Okay, I hear some tuning things. Let's retune. It's like it falls in pitch right there for a second. Okay, really cool, right? There's some interesting things with that. I don't know if we want to do as much with the mod or the LFOs. We could maybe add just a little bit of some reverb to this. Not reverb, but like vibrato. That's what I was thinking. Let's add a little bit of vibrato. And maybe a little bit of panning back and forth. But we'll have it fade in so it starts over time. Cool. I mean, we took my voice and just turned it into this instrument, which actually has a lot of interesting things. And we're just scratching the surface. There's so much more that we can do with this. But I hope that you can see some of the power that we have just using this tool and using some of the features that have been built up over time and increased. The last thing I'll say is that this is MPE compatible. So you can do individual things for individual notes if you have the right controller and or want to edit some of that data by hand. That means that this just became this incredibly powerful tool, even though it's all based off of a one single file import. I think that's amazing. This should be a tool that you reach for and use all of the time in your creative sound, music creation, sonicscape design. This thing should just be a part of everything. Okay, that's where we're going to end this. If you like this, let me know. We can do more deep dives on tools, but just let me know which of them that you're most interested in.